and we're up past 40 right now. And Carla, we're at start time, and may I turn it over to you, please?
Yes, thank you so much, Russ. And hello and welcome to FGDLA's Government Learning and Technology Symposium Series. I'm Carla Lane. I'm the Vice President for the Higher Education Sector for FGDLA and your moderator for today, along with Russ Colbert, who is the Vice President for the Corporate Sector, and Sandy Wagner from DLI, who's stepping in, is going to be with us today as a panelist. So Sandy, welcome. So I just wanted to tell you all a little bit about FGDLA. It's a nonprofit. We're a professional organization and association. We're formed to promote the development of the application of distance learning in the federal government. We actively foster collaboration and understanding among those involved in leveraging technology and instructional media in support of the education and training needs of the federal government. Our membership is derived primarily from individuals employed by the agencies within the federal government. We invite you to join with us in this exciting field. You'll find membership forms at fgdla.us. I also wanted to mention that we have a new YouTube channel that has all of our webinars. We're in the third year of doing this, and you can find them at youtube.com/FGDLA/videos. So go and take a look. They really look great there. So for the upcoming events, want to go to the next slide, Tara? Back one. There you go. For upcoming events on September 18th, Ellen Finkelstein will present on using Copilot with PowerPoint. Dr. Jenny Varicchio will present a 2-hour workshop on gamified learning design using generative AI. This is part 2 in the series, and that session will also carry FGDLA certification. On November 13th, DAU's Brenda Sedlacek will identify instructional strategies for great webinars for producers and program managers. And finally, the FGDLA Awards will be presented on December 4th, so watch for the entry form that will be out soon. We hope you will join us for these special online events. And if you have any ideas for webinars, let us know. We've got January and February already lined up for 2025, but we're looking for other things to fill out the rest of the year. We are so proud that Zoom and Moodle have become such valued sponsors for FGDLA. They have been instrumental in helping us present the webinars. We recently announced that COSO Cloud has become a new sponsor for FGDLA. COSO Cloud is a class technologies company and a leading provider of secure, customized e-learning solutions for the government and enterprise sectors. Joining forces with COSO Cloud enables FGDLA to continue to offer comprehensive and future-focused learning solutions to meet the training needs of the federal government. Russ, would you like to add anything to that?
Sure, Carla. I appreciate Zoom and Moodle and Coastal Cloud. Sometimes I confuse the name Coastal Cloud and I say SoCo Cloud, like a section in New York. But anyway, little humor. We do appreciate a sponsor so much. They're amazing. They empower people within the federal government and outside the federal government with their solutions. So thank you for being an advocate for technology in general, and we appreciate you so much. Back to you, Carla.
Yeah, we are. We appreciate them, and we are so honored to have them as they're wonderful sponsors. We think that they are the best. So today's webinar will introduce you to DoD's policies about AI adoption and deployment. This includes a comprehensive framework and toolbox for responsible and ethical AI, as well as data analytics tools. The session will be 2 hours long, not one. So if you do have to leave early, we're recording it, so you can go back to either the FGDLA website or the YouTube channel, and the full recording will be there. Tara Schendel of DLI will take you through this. Tara is with the Defense Language Institute in Washington. She's the academic advisor for education and information technology. She oversees multiple technology projects and serves as the technology subject matter expert and liaison for the DLA Foreign Language Center. And now, Tara, the floor is yours. Thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you guys, everyone. It's an honor to be here, and I appreciate you all taking time out of your day for this. So I hope that you'll take away something interesting and fascinating. Before I start, I need to make the lawyers happy. So I am presenting independently today. I am not an official representative today of DLI FLC, the Department of the Army, or the Department of Defense. However, I have obviously worked for them for 20 years, so I know a few things. So I just wanted to get that out of the way. I wanted to get started very quickly to kind of gauge my audience, and I'll need some help from my moderators maybe a little bit. If you guys can scan this QR code, it's going to take you over to what I'm calling my pulse check. So I'm going to give you a second, and as you do that, let me leave that up there for you so that you can actually scan it. As you do that, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what spurred me to do this particular type of webinar. And it's basically, I have spent 1.5 years on a journey of diving deep into AI and not just playing with the tools so much as trying to figure out what the ramifications of the tools are. I have a degree in French language and literature, but my master's degree is in international policy. And so I'm really a policy person more so than a foreign language education person. However, I've had this wonderful opportunity to blend both of those in my career. And I've always been very interested in how we lead change, bring change, what technology does to encourage change. And in my experiences, I've learned that it can do amazing things and it can also, be detrimental. And so this AI is a great opportunity, but it's got a lot of potential pitfalls. And I've been listening to a lot of hype, and I wanted to sort of bring it down into the real world. And the DoD has been doing a lot of work on this. So let's take a check on our pulse check. And I see that a lot of you say that you use AI ML tools only occasionally. So you'll usually see artificial intelligence / machine learning combined, because AI is just an umbrella term that covers a lot of different types of synthetic learning, if you will. Machine learning is the precursor to this. I want to tell all of you that you actually use AI every day. You've been using some form of AI probably for many years. Every time you smash a like button on a Facebook page or a Twitter feed, or you say that you like a song in your Pandora box or what have you, you are training an AI system, and you are also using an AI system because they have been using this data for quite a while to personalize your experiences, from Netflix to what you order from
Pizza.
Uber Eats.
When you order pizza.
Pizza, exactly. So actually, you're using it a lot. I see 44% of you kind of understand that. And so those of you who said never, I'm sorry, I hate to tell you this, but if you're online, you're using AI. So today I want to talk about what is responsible AI, and how do we assess risk when we're looking at AI, and what are the DoD responsible AI principles. Now, for those of you who may not be part of the DoD culture, the DoD always has doctrine for everything. And there's a guidebook for absolutely everything that it does. And responsible AI is not an exception to this. And it is not something that is new to the DoD, but as it's going to be pushed out to a broader group of users, the DoD has been really focusing on better ways to do this. And then we're going to have a little touch of AI and ethics. We're going to go kind of high-minded on you. I don't know how many Trekkies are out there, but you're going to see a brief little clip from Star Trek today that will, I hope, be thought-provoking. And then we're going to touch on data privacy and security. But then I want to bring it down to your classroom, because ultimately, for those of you who are instructional designers or working with distance learning, the question you're going to have is, well, how do these DoD principles feed what I do every day? Because they're really big strategic level. And I'm down here at the tactical level. So how does that work for me? So I want to try to bring it home to you at the end with some practical things that you can use, to make sure that you're doing things responsibly. So we're going to go top down and bottom up today. So I want to start out by kind of giving you this idea that AI is a product. It's a capability. I've heard it called many things. And it's not that different from many of our other products that we have out there in the world. And, we have protocols for developing pharmaceuticals and testing new medicines. And we have rules about food inspections and labeling and quality standards. And we train workers and we design equipment for safety and what have you. And we try to maintain those regulations. We have motor vehicle laws. I mean, we have done this journey as a society and as a culture and as a government before. So AI is just kind of a new turn of this wheel. So we're not new at this. And that's the first thing I want to kind of get across to you, is that we are not, developing something from nothing. AI didn't come out of a vacuum. It exists within a context of all the things that, I hate to say that, all the things that have come before. So with that, I want to play a little game here. And this one, you're just going to have to hit the chat. We're not going to do anything fancy. And you guys can give us, pop in the chat which one you pick. But in what year was the term AI coined? And I'm going to give you a second. And you're going to have to help me out there, moderators, because I'm not sure what people are putting in the chat.
Well, you have one already that jumped to Google really fast. The audience is really lightning fast, Tara. I'm sorry. Woo! It just increased really faster than eyes can check it. I see a C, A, 1950, 1950, A, 1950, 50, 50, 50, A, 1975. Johnny Holden says A. Okay.
You guys should all know that I have a history as a test developer, so I know how to trick you. So if I can actually get the answer, oops, it looks like my animations aren't going to function right now. So I'm just going to tell you that it's actually a marketing term that was coined in 1955.
Ooh.
And it came from a research project called the Dartmouth Summer Research Project. And it was actually a 2-month, 10-man study. It was submitted by Professor John McCarthy of Dartmouth College, Marvin Minsky of Harvard University, and Nathaniel Rochester from IBM, and also Claude Shannon from Bell Telephone Laboratories. And that was an attempt will be made to find how to make machines use language, form abstractions and concepts, solve the kinds of problems now reserved for humans, and improve themselves. So it was a marketing term. I guess my next thing would be, what was the first game where a computer beat a human opponent? The first game where the computer beat a human opponent.
Got a lot of D's coming up. A's, C's. A little bit of everything.
Chess. Monopoly. Monopoly.
Monopoly. Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to tell you that it was 1959, and a computer beat its developer at checkers for the first time.
I did it. I did it.
And actually, what crawled out of it was a paper called Some Studies in Machine Learning Using the Game of Checkers, and it appeared in the IBM Journal.
Wow.
Now my stuff is working. Okay. What was the name of the first AI chatbot?
A lot of B's coming up. C's. Hal.
Yeah, Hal was an evil chat. So the answer is Eliza. And Eliza first appeared in 1964. And it was named after the fictional character Eliza Doolittle. So for those of you who know your Broadway, it's from My Fair Lady. And the idea was that Eliza was a street wench that was going to be converted into a queen. And so here you go. You had Eliza, and you can see here the first sort of chat that took place. And Eliza is a mock psychotherapist. So again, so that was 1964. Okay, one final one, now that you're all warmed up and you've got my game. Why is this painting notable?
Why is this painting notable?
Nobody's answering.
They got to read it. It takes a while. I stumped the chumps.
Yes, you did. Come on, just put in some answers. If it's wrong, it's wrong. Who cares?
I'll ease your suffering.
Yeah.
Oh, you got some answers? You got some answers?
Yeah, there's some C's, a couple of B's, a couple more C's. Okay.
Not bad guesses. The answer is actually that A, it is the most highly valued piece of AI art ever sold. It is a fictional character named Edmund de Bellamy. It's an AI-generated piece that was created in 2018 by a Paris-based art collective called Obvious. The Christie's pre-auction estimate for this was $7,000 to $10,000. I hope you're sitting down. It sold for $432,500.
Wow. Why?
And it was part of a series called La Famille de Bellamy, and it was done using what they call adversarial AI, where you basically had one AI tool that played the critic and the other AI tool that started to paint, and as they worked with each other, they both got smarter. So that's the story on this one. So thank you for playing my trivia game. But the whole point is, as you can see, this has been an idea that's been percolating for quite a while, and we've had various iterations of it over time. So what is then responsible AI? Well, let me give you this. When you drive a car, you are constantly monitoring your mirrors, you're monitoring the road, you're keeping your eyes forward, you're probably texting, come on, you all do it, you know you do it. You're playing with your audiobook, whatever. But you don't just get in the car, hit drive and go. You have to always be looking and assessing your risk. And that's really what responsible AI is about. It's ensuring safe systems that are powered by machine learning or AI are used ethically. And it manifests itself by maintaining the respect that we already have for ethical guidelines. We have data governance policies that exist within our various organizations, and these are policies that tell us what data people can access, how they can access it, how long they can access it. There are code testing standards that your programmers in your organizations have to follow, and there are protocols for that. And then we do have some safety guidelines around how technology should be constructed. And we're going to talk a little bit more because there's new developments on that front right now. But the point is that AI is a journey. It's not a destination. And just like when you get in your car, you have to monitor, you have to be looking and constantly reviewing your protocols and guidelines from the start to finish, because AI is constantly evolving, and your systems have to evolve with it. And anything that we do with AI, it has to align with our professional ethics and codes. If you're from a university, you have academic integrity policies. We have intellectual property guidelines and copyright laws that we have to pay attention to, cybersecurity practices. And in the military, we're very big on OPSEC, which is, we want to make sure that we're not putting pieces of information in separate places that can be gathered, put together so that a picture can be formed. So there's a lot of, loose lips, sink ships kind of culture within our military, and we need to make sure that we observe the kind of data that we're using and how we're using it, and making sure that we're not exposing our personnel to undue risk. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot about data privacy, and we're going to address a lot of this as we go forward. So responsible AI happens all throughout a journey, from the point where you're designing the AI all the way until development, testing, and deployment. And this is something that the DoD is putting into place, that you have got to be doing your risk assessments, and you've got to be looking at your codes and ethics and rules at every stage of the journey, every stage of the development of an AI tool or capability. So you always have to be looking. So a while back, many years ago, I actually took on a technology product, and I had never led a technology project before, and I didn't know really what the culture of my new team was, because I hadn't worked with programmers or computer engineers before. And at the time, HBO put out this great kind of docu-comedy called Silicon Valley. And as I watched Silicon Valley, I began to learn, and it is a story about the journey from the garage all the way up to the boardroom in terms of developing a software product and all of the things that go into it and all of the kinds of people and characters that participate. I want to share a clip from that show with you today. And I'd like you to notice, just kind of take note, what goes right, what goes wrong, because we're going to talk about it. I'm going to have you put some stuff in chat. I want you to be ready to kind of throw some stuff in the chat that you observe here. So let's just take a quick look. And I hope you can hear it.
It's hard to hear, Tara, at least on my end. Yeah.
Is there a Zoom setting, Russ, that you need to do to share? Do I need to share system somewhere?
There is, but you may not be able to grab it in time, Tara. It's under audio. If you click on the up arrow for audio, you may be able to indicate an audio setting. And let me look quickly with you. Okay, I don't see it there under share. Let's just check on share, advanced sharing options. I'll check that. And no, it's not there. It doesn't look like there's anything that we can, and it should ask, but the later versions, Molly, of Zoom, which I'm using as the host today, have automated that setting. And so they're no longer available to anyone that might have an older version. So I don't think so, Tara. So my suggestion would be just talk us through it.
Well, it's kind of lost if I don't talk you. I can't really talk you through it so much because you kind of have to see it. What I will do is I will go ahead and try to play it, and let me see if I can turn on some. If there's any way I can turn on some closed captioning for you, maybe. We try that.
There you go.
I have my closed caption on, Tara, but it's closed caption, I believe, will be working from whatever the closed caption will work with whatever you're putting into the microphone. So I see myself with closed captioning right now, so it won't pick up from an audio source. It's not detected.
Okay. So the point of this video, as we move through, you're seeing here that a lot of these guys are selling their tech products on the idea that it's going to make the world a better place. The culture of technology, nobody starts out to be maniacal. They start out because they want to solve a problem. And most of them think that the problem they're solving will, once they solve it, will make the world a better place. And so this particular clip shows a series of people doing a pitch as they're trying to get venture capital for their business. And at the very end of this, there is a gentleman who's got the human heater. And in the human heater, he is saying that we're going to use microwaves to heat you up. And the people on this panel down here are absolutely stunned. And he offers to actually do a demonstration, and they stop him completely and say, this product, I don't trust you. I don't trust this product. And this product is never going to see the light of day. So wow. Had we actually been able to do the whole process, what I would have wanted you to notice is that, first of all, somebody didn't think through very well the type of product that they were putting out on the market. And what we talk about in the DoD across the board is the idea of trust and how you must have trust in not only your gear, but in each other, and primarily it's trust in each other. The foundation of every piece of DoD doctrine is trust. And without it, you cannot go to war because your soldiers won't trust the commands they're being given. They won't trust the equipment that they're asked to use. So ultimately, AI systems only work when they are based in trust. And we have a principled approach to AI that anchors everything that this department does. We call this responsible AI, and it's a place where cutting edge tech meets timeless values. And that's from Secretary Lloyd Austin. And then if you look at the executive order on AI that came out last year, you're going to see a quote in there that we are harnessing AI for good, and realizing its myriad of benefits requires mitigating its substantial risks. This endeavor demands a society-wide effort that includes government, private, academia, and civil society. So with that, in 2020, we set up the Chief Digital and Artificial Intelligence Office at the DoD that has a specific mission, and that mission is to accelerate DoD adoption of data analytics, and that emphasis is mine, and I'm going to talk about that in a second, and artificial intelligence from the boardroom to the battlefield to enable decision-making advantage. So the first thing you're probably going to ask me is, what is decision-making advantage? And in military parlance, it's having the most accurate, timely, and relevant information so that you can make quick decisions in an environment that changes constantly and quickly. And you're always wanting to stay ahead of the competition or the situation you're in. So to give you an example, if I know that I need 15 tanks at a certain location at a specific time, the earlier I can get the data that I need to get those tanks out, the faster ahead of the game I'm going to be. And that's with everything we do. Same thing with funding. If I need to cut a contract really quick in order to get something done, the faster I can do that with the data on my hands, I will be able to do that more quickly.
A real-time example, Tara, is the U.S. Navy destroyer sitting in the Red Sea right now that has less than 15 seconds to make a decision on whether a threat is going to destroy that ship or not. And so those men and women that are making those decisions have 15 seconds or less, and it's got to be right, and it's got to be 100% of the time.
Correct. Thank you. That's a great example. So I highlighted the idea of data analytics because the first thing when you talk to the head of the CDAO, they'll tell you AI is data, and everything starts with making sure we're gathering and structuring and cleaning our data appropriately. And you're going to hear me come back to that theme as we move throughout this presentation. The CDAO is aggregating kind of a lot of different efforts that have existed in the DoD for a while under this one umbrella. Some of them you may have heard of. We've had Task Force Lima is one. Various services, the Army, all of our services have some form of innovation hub that is trying to work with AI. And so the CDAO becomes kind of an organizer, coordinator, and resource for all of us when we're trying to work through these AI problems. They've created a marketplace called TradeWinds. This is a very different kind of marketplace. For those of you who've ever had to work with government contracting, it can be a very long and complex process. What TradeWinds does is the CDAO has already vetted vendors, vetted the products, done all of the initial acquisition and competition that is required. And now me as a government user has the ability to go to that TradeWinds marketplace and window shop the vendors. And those are award ready. So I'm able to then make decisions right there. They've already done kind of the heavy lifting for me. So that's something that's very new. And a lot of folks in government don't know it exists. But this is one way that we're trying to responsibly acquire AI, because then our experts at the CDAO have already done a lot of the vetting for us to make sure that these products are in compliance and alignment with the DoD principles and policies.
Nice.
So the first thing that anybody in government wants to do, and going back to my microwave, I'm going to heat your body guy, he obviously didn't do a very good risk assessment. Okay. Had he done a risk assessment, he might have realized that was a really bad idea. So one of the frameworks that the DoD is developing through the CDAO is the STOPES factors. And we love our acronyms, and the cooler the word they make, the more we like them. So the STOPES factors are a way of taking an AI product and looking at it and saying, what are the social impacts and what are the mitigation measures for each of these impacts? What are the technological impacts? What are the operational impacts? So going through this process of really thinking through the various layers is something that is a beginning of a risk assessment framework. Now, for many of you in private industry, you probably are familiar with NIST, the National Institute for Standards and Technology, which is run through the Department of Commerce. Well, the STOPES factors are compliant with the NIST framework as well. All of these things are all kind of in the same compliance area. The difference is that we're trying to customize it for the specific DoD needs. So you'll see some familiar things here. So when we're adopting an AI tool, whether it's an education technology tool, a targeting tool, a logistics AI tool, we want to take a look and say, what are the impacts on the larger social setting? Okay, whether that's inside of my organization or among my allies and partners. How will they feel? What would their attitudes and perceptions be when we use this AI tool? And what would be the potential effects? If we're talking about technology, come on, hello, there we go. Will the AI tool be interoperable? Will it work with the other things that we have? Do we need additional servers? Are we going to need internet connections? Do we need to cut contracts for more cloud services? Do we need to realign our network? All of that falls under the technological umbrella. You're looking at operational impacts. Budgets are always a question in government. And what will be the return on investment? There's a lot of people who don't think that the government cares about a return on investment, but we do. When we're going to when we're going to purchase something or we're going to build something, we really want to know how many members of our workforce are going to be able to use that tool before we've kind of recouped that investment. And then most importantly, does the tool align with our mission goals and where we're headed? So they look at that. Then there's going to be the policies, the political aspect of things, and what's the political climate. So like right now, I'm interested in working on an AI tool. However, we have a brand new commandant. So before I can move forward, I really need to see what her priorities are and where she wants to lead us before we start going too deep into something new. So that's a political climate issue. And then there's the economic factors. Many of you might be aware that during COVID, the government had contracts, the government was still working, but inflation spiked. So, we had to go in and modify a lot of our contracts to account for those spikes in prices that were not planned. So that's the kind of thing you have to be looking for on the economic side as labor costs change or market conditions change. Another example will be our trade policies. Right now, we know that we have a lot of restrictions on computer chips and what can be imported and exported. Well, that's part of a larger economic setting. And then the sustainability is a big piece of that. How long before this capability depreciates? Are we going to be able to use this for 5 years or 25 years, right? And then largely the environmental impact. The environmental impact is important because the DoD is trying to shrink its carbon footprint. I know that's kind of hard for a lot of people to believe, but obviously we are huge polluters. We have massive movements across the globe. We use a lot of fuel. We use a lot of plastic and a lot of metal and a lot of bullets. So we want to try where we can to not be so harsh on our environment. And AI takes a lot of electricity. It takes a lot of cooling and a lot of processing power. So that all has to play into our decisions. So I kind of very quickly walked you through that. Now, a lot of you guys are working because you're the Distance Learning Association. You're working in educational or training environments. And so your question might be to me, well, Tara, how does that really boil down to me? Well, I'm going to give you a fictional scenario. And some of this may be familiar to you. Your institution is looking at adopting an AI-powered capability that will track students in real time across learning environments and will dish up new learning content. Sounds great, right? Fabulous. The AI will collect eye movement, keystrokes, number of clicks, what students click, how much time they're engaged with the activity, the number of attempts on activities, and their scores. Digest that for a second. Just digest it.
How many cups of coffee they drink? How many pieces of popcorn?
Exactly. Learn.
Okay. So if I'm sitting here, and normally I would be doing this in a workshop, and you guys would all be contributing, and we'd have poster boards on the wall, and you guys would all be going around marking those boards with what you see as those impacts. But since we're doing this in a different mode, we're going to be flexible. So socially, I might say the students could feel really empowered by the kind of data that they're getting their hands on with that. They could also feel spied on. They might also feel abandoned if the teacher just says, go do it on there and let the machine handle it. So we have to figure out how we're going to mitigate for that if we're going to move forward. You might see increased teamwork between students and teachers because if they're both looking at the same data, then they can collaborate together to figure out what should happen next. So that could be a really positive outcome. And it would have impacts or implications for the trust between the students and the teachers. Depending on how we do this, it could either build trust or it could degrade trust. So then you start thinking through the mitigation measures, right? So one thing would be being very transparent about how and why data is being collected and used, and limiting maybe the types of features. Maybe if we don't need to collect all of that kind of data, maybe we only collect a few bits of data, not everything. And then maybe allowing students to opt in versus opting out of data collection. That might be another way of doing this. So again, this is not to be, you probably have 15 other things that you could think about, but I just wanted to give you a sampling. And we think of the DoD and we think of how huge it is, but really, guys, it comes down to something as simple as this. This is where it starts. It's 5 or 6 people in an office sitting down, putting their heads together and doing this kind of a risk assessment. And then you can measure that, you can add numbers to this, you can begin putting these into matrices. The CDAO has all of these kinds of templates to help people out to do this. Technologically, what happens if the AI algorithm is incorrectly weighted and it skews the outputs and maybe gets students the wrong content? Could that be a problem? Students may just click all the time, well, I know this thing does clickstream data. Let me just click and see if I can mess with the outputs. This is actually pretty real. When I was developing our learning content management system, this was a conversation we actually had because we were trying to figure out what kind of learner metrics. And we were saying, well, if somebody's engaging with a task and they get up and go to the bathroom and have pizza and then call their friend on the phone, it might be 2 hours. Does that mean they were engaging with it for 2 hours? Of course not. How do we know? Well, you have to layer data to figure that out. All of the interaction, all of this may slow down your network. I've had that happen too, where the interactions between the students clicking and then sending information to the cloud or the server and coming back down, it got really slow and it got really glitchy. So you have to deal with that. So you have to be monitoring your systems continuously. You might have to have a recalibration plan if something isn't working on your algorithm. You always have to tune those. You always have to work those algorithms all the time. Maybe you have to do like they do at the eye doctor when they give you that peripheral vision test and they hand you the little clicker. Well, the eye doctor knows how many lights went blink and how many times you clicked. So it's pretty easy to see if you've been excessive. So that might be a way of mitigating that. Maybe you have to redirect your network traffic, what have you. If you're looking operationally, I just gave you an example. We have a new leader now. So, maybe that, developing an AI tool may not really be that person's top priority. But if we did, perhaps we could have improvements to curriculum because we have better data, and maybe that'll feed a different operational needs. So that's a good possibility. And it may have an effect on how students are trained within our organization. So this is a question that one of my vendors recently asked me. I was asked, how do you see training changing, especially in the foreign language world, because of AI? And, we've always tried to integrate technology tools into the training that we do, but how will that fundamentally change our training going forward? I think to a degree that remains to be seen. So one thing would be, if you're going to mitigate measures, get your capability documented and approved and signed, sealed, and delivered, because there's continuity from one leader to the next. So when the new leader comes in and they're seeing that all of this was already in the works, okay, well, now I'm going to hold you accountable for it. So that's one way of doing that. You want to build a data analysis plan, perhaps for curriculum. So if we do get data out of this system that we're building, how are we going to analyze that data and use that data to make decisions? You have to have that plan in place. Maybe you're only going to use AI-powered tools for certain portions of the training, maybe just for homework or for self-study. So again, thinking through the operational requirements. Political impacts, what are the reactions of stakeholders? Some of our stakeholders, right now, DLI Washington is partnering with another DoD agency. And when I ran a stakeholder analysis, I realized that because we're going to be using students with this tool, we actually need to talk to our service units, because they're the ones who send us our students, and we don't want to catch them out because they may have some concerns, and we need to bring that community in and make sure that they're aware of what we're doing. We need to talk to our teachers and our students too, because maybe our students don't want to participate in this kind of a thing. So we have to make sure that we're bringing our communities together. And there's always a fear of data weaponization. So I've worked in standardized testing for a long time. And as a person who worked in standardized testing, I really wanted to build a good quality assessment instrument so that we could understand where our students were. But sometimes we used the data from that to penalize teachers, to tell them that they weren't doing good enough. Well, that's not how we want our data to be used. So we have to build protections in place so that we know exactly what we're using our data for and what we're actually going to, what kind of a product or what kind of a change we're going to make based on what the data is telling us. So Conduct a proper needs analysis, communicate early and often with your stakeholders, have an open channel, because you might have one meeting and they may talk to you, but then, 3 days later, they've thought about it and now they have a new set of questions. And if they can't get a hold of you, well, they're going to feel like you're not really paying attention to them. You want to involve your your stakeholders in the decision-making processes about how the AI will be used. And you want to have a governance plan in place in order to prevent weaponization. Again, that governance is, how is this data going to be used? Who's going to see it? And I will say my organization does a pretty good job of making sure that data is governed appropriately. I mean, we have surveys with our students throughout their courses, and only certain people can access those and see them. And that's done by design. So again, you want to think through all of this. Economic, we've already talked about. One thing people talk about is, you might, because this is a new field, you might have a large number of new entrants coming into the market, and a lot of them aren't going to survive. And we've seen this. I mean, I saw it with the dot-com boom in the early 2000s. We saw it again with the Web 2.0 boom in the 2008 to 2010, where suddenly there was a new learning app every week. It's happening again with AI. And a lot of the learning apps that survived that Web 2.0 boom, they're now integrating AI into their updated products. So you're going to see the marketplace shift and change, and they're going to start using AI to refine their licensing models. And so you're going to see different plans and packages, and eventually you might see where specific pricing plans are targeted for specific institutions using data to figure that out. There's going to be huge intellectual property implications. I know many of you have already thought of that. And that is still a moving target in our court system. We're still trying to hash some of that out. So you want to, when you're getting ready to use an AI or build an AI, you want to do market research and find the solid vendors that you can trust. You want to kind of think through the intellectual property implications. What is your institution's rules about copyright and fair use? And they might have additional policies that you need to keep in mind. And then if you're going to actually cut a contract, you might want to do small business set-asides or what have you to encourage smaller vendors in the market. I know that we at the DoD have a lot of rules about the size of vendors when we're cutting various contracts. So you have to work with people that are, higher up in the food chain or in different parts of your organization. And then finally, when we think about sustainability, it gets to what I mentioned before. A lot of people are excited about AI, but they don't realize that it's pulling power from the electrical grid. And I'll give you kind of a quick idea of this. If you have a military base in Germany and you start using a bunch of the power grid, you're going to starve the local community around that military base of electrical power. You might cause a blackout. You might cause other systems in the community to crash. And that's not going to be really good for building relationships among the German population where your military base is sitting. So you really want to think through the sustainability and how much pull you're using when you're employing a lot of these tools. And then there's uncertainty with the long-term use of newer technologies. We really don't know how it's going to play out over time. So you do your feasibility studies, and we used to do a lot of load testing. There's ways that load testing can be done on networks. You might want to limit use, like I said, to only certain courses, types of courses, or only certain times of the day. Maybe you put new solar panels on your facilities, whatever works, but you have to go through that kind of assessment. So this is all laid out by the CDAO with the authorization of the DoD. And what we want to kind of highlight here is that as I went through these examples, you probably noticed that they don't stay neatly in their boxes. Something that appears to be a technological issue can very quickly become a social or a political issue. And let me tell you, if you think that adopting a technology tool is not a political issue, you haven't lived. Because let me tell you, it is one of the most political things I've ever done. And I've done a lot of high stakes testing. So I would have thought that high stakes testing was political, and then I started running a technology product. So these things overlap. And so after you've kind of done your sort of stovepiped analysis, you have to come together and see where the overlaps are in that.
Do you mean,
also,
Tara, do you mean
yes.
you encountered resistance with your adoption of technology? Is that what you mean?
No, well, you're always going to encounter resistance, but there's also competition.
Compete.
So you might have one vision for how you want to roll something out, and somebody else in another part of the organization may have another.
Uh-huh.
And if those
Okay.
two things can't come together nicely, you're going to have some politics involved, right?
Mm,
Also, fighting for resources. So right now, the DoD is looking at budget cuts, and there's going to be a lot of politics and fighting for the money, right? Because
right.
you only have so much. So, are you going to get funded?
Mm,
That's another big question,
okay.
right? Yeah. Anything else before I keep prattling on really quickly?
Thank you for that.
Well, T, I just wanted to throw in, I mean, a clear example is when we wanted to migrate to a new learning management system, which involved all, and we really want to involve all stakeholders, which again would link to the AI capability model because now you're getting input, but then, you know, you've got cybersecurity that is the deal breaker on any LMS to be considered. And even when we went through with our criteria, metrics being a really big one, for learners because it does inform, you know, how we're moving forward and what products, a litany of things. So it became very political.
Yeah.
You know, and then you go up the chain, and even though you may recommend one, sometimes the politics needs to take precedence. So you have things. I mean, I'm just giving you scenarios.
No, exactly. No, but this is, I think everybody on the call has probably seen or witnessed some kind of
Mhm.
of snafu with that kind of stuff. So you do have to read your environment. And risk is a dynamic concept. It has to be analyzed again throughout the entire life cycle because things change. Things change. Anybody who spent any time in the military knows how quickly something can change. Overnight, you know, we have a war in the Middle East. I mean, that's how quickly something can change. So you have to be constantly assessing your risk. And then
And,
finally, risk is what we
and
call a shifting dynamic. The amount of impact at any given point can change as well. So something that was really impactful at the beginning, over time will become less impactful, and something new will pop up. So that's why you kind of see these arrows pointing in both directions because AI affects the environment that it's operating in, but the environment also affects AI and how it's deployed and developed. And I heard somebody want to jump in.
I just wanted to, Tara, I'm sorry. I looked through the attendees, and there are a lot of U.S. military personnel on the webinar with us today. So I'm sure we are all shaking our head in agreement with you that change can happen very fast.
Yes, and I'm sure my military members have more experience than I do in a much more diverse set of places. So I value their input if they've got stuff in the chat. That's really great.
Sarah, I do have a question. Largely everything that you're talking about is a component of evaluation, but I haven't heard you use that word. Where does that fit in?
Well, I use the word risk assessment. We talk about assessment. All of it eventually leads to an overall evaluation of the AI and how it's going to work or of the technology. There's different levels of evaluation, so it just depends on what level you're in. I use assessment and evaluation interchangeably.
Okay, so formative evaluation, lots of that, because that addresses the shifting dynamic. You would be able to catch things
Sure.
earlier rather than later.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So you are all familiar with these companies? Okay. What do they all have in common that you can see? Yes, they're all tech companies. We got that.
What do they have in common? Um,
Where do they all live? Where do they all live?
California, Washington, the Beltway, and DC.
They all live in the United States. They're all US based companies. Okay. And as
That was good.
such, that was good. I love it. They are a transmitter of our national values. And this is something that CDAO and the Secretary of Defense has been pushing down hard on, that it is a transmitter of national values. How we engineer our AI, how we deploy our AI, and how we use it all says something about who we are as a country. as a nation, right?
Mhm.
So to go back to that piece of quote from Secretary Austin, RIA is the place where cutting edge tech meets timeless values. You can see that the Deputy Secretary of Defense Kathleen Hicks has said the US continues to lead the global AI arms race with China because it's powered by a free and open society, committed to responsible use, values, and ideals. And then if you go down below, the Secretary of the US Air Force, Frank Kendall, in front of Congress just last month, said, I care a lot about civil society and the rule of law, including laws of armed conflict. Our challenge is not to somehow limit what we can do with AI, but it's to find a way to hold people accountable for what AI does. And that's really the crux of it. These are tools. We are in charge of these tools. We are building them and we are using them. So to the extent that we can use them well, we can build that trust. And it's not just the trust, you've got to remember when you're working with the DoD, for those of you who aren't with the DoD, we have allied partners and friends. We pass our technology to them. They pass their technology to us. So we have to have confidence that we have some level of shared values on how these technologies are going to be used. So I'll just give you a small example. Last year, I was sitting in a little webinar about the importance of forms. And I know that sounds crazy and you think I'm a real nerd because I actually sat through a whole day webinar about how you build forms. But the reason is forms are the place where the public meets government. Every time you go to government, you're being asked to fill out a form. And it is a communication device. So they had a gentleman there who was from France, and he was discussing a protocol that they'd used for how to build a very user-friendly form so that citizens could get public services without a whole lot of hassle. And in the process, he was asked if they were using Microsoft products. And he actually told us that not at this time. And he said the reason why is we have concerns about how the United States will use the data because Microsoft is a US-based company. And until the French government can negotiate a certain level of privacy laws, we're not allowed to use that on our government machines. Okay, that is, they had, by the way, the French have since done that. So that was last year. But that's just an example of how national values can play into how we work with our partners and allies. Okay.
Tara, can I interject? There's a question I think it's related from Stephen Fowler. How do you keep AI learning in a closed system and the follow along, but you want to access outside the closed system? And then training the AI with your information exposes it to others who you don't want to see it.
Okay, I think, but what you mean by a closed system, do you mean, I'm not sure what he means by a closed system.
Yeah, Stephen, can you type up, elaboration there, please? Well, we can go back to it.
Okay.
I'll
Okay.
wait
I want to
till
make sure I
finish.
understand his question before I try to
Yeah, it sounds like you want to, if you're keeping how do you keep AI learning in a closed system, but you want to access it outside the closed system. I mean, I can conjecture that maybe it means that only certain people are allowed to use it, or maybe it's within the government, something like that. And again, I'm not sure, but training the AI with your information exposes it to others who you don't want to see it.
It could. It depends on how, okay, so it would depend on how you were training it or how you were doing it. So for example, within the DoD, we can create sandboxes where we can train things on our internal data that is only internal to our organization. We have standard protocols within these systems for permissions and what have you that can be built into that. AI is an algorithm. It's built into a larger system, just like Microsoft Office is built into a larger system. Now, if you're talking about being able to segregate data, for instance, if I'm using a Microsoft Copilot and I'm sitting inside of a DoD agency, the data that I'm trying to use to train, you're concerned that it may be going out to Microsoft and then it may leak into other organizations.
Right.
That's something that Microsoft and the DoD agency have to work together on, and they do consistently to make sure that data doesn't leak. But there's no 100% guarantees.
Right.
Nobody is going to ever give you a 100% guarantee.
Right. So here's the following. You want AI to reach out to the closed system, but not share the information you use to train it.
That's right. You should be able to
Yeah.
do that because you're just locking it within a permission structure.
Right. Okay.
So it's just that you won't be able to use data from any more than you would want to use outside data to train a closed system. You want
Right.
to keep your pool clean. I mean, I hope that kind of answers that. I mean, I'm all clear here. I know a lot about policy. I'm not in the weeds of how the systems
Good.
actually
Right.
function. So I don't want to speak beyond my subject matter expertise.
Exactly.
I do know people who could answer that type of question at more depth. So if he wants to contact somebody, I can try to set up some kind of, reach out.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so I had my Cookie Monster up there because basically what I wanted to point out is that when you talk to folks in the DoD, AI is really a data problem. And this question actually highlights that when you're talking about which data and how to use it. The DoD looks at data as a strategic asset. And I pulled this out of The Economist here a couple weeks ago. It gives you a sense of how where the DoD is using artificial intelligence. There are according to Bloomberg, there were over 800 AI projects across the DoD. I have not confirmed that within the DoD, but that is what the media is reporting. So you can see that a lot of it is used for intelligent and autonomous vehicles, surveillance and reconnaissance. Predictive maintenance and logistics is a big thing. I just attended a 3-day conference down at Newport News that was dealing with global expeditionary logistics and the changes that are going on there and the way they're trying to use AI to do predictive maintenance and to pre-position materiel ahead of time. And the idea that if we can see logistics as key to war, we might be able to head off a conflict by simply orchestrating a supply line in a specific way. Logistics is a power projection. How you place goods, how well you clothe and feed your service members, all of that plays into the psychology of the enemy and lets them see that maybe if you do it well, that they shouldn't mess with us. So having AI is really important for that. Information warfare, simulation and training is really big. Talk to any pilots. They're going to be talking about AI-powered simulation training. We do forms of that with virtual reality sometimes in our programs. So the bottom line, though, in all of this, and I want to stress this as you see these numbers, DoD does not allow any system as of now to do any targeting. A human has to be in the loop. And that's something that's part of the responsible AI. Our allies agree with that, and that is how we function as well. So I don't want to leave you with some impression that, we're just allowing things to auto target. Or to auto shoot. That's, the kill. There's a human being on the other end of that kill. Mm-hmm. So again, technology is a source of power and it's a source of power projection. It goes back to our national values, and this, you hear it in the media, the constant competition with China. Information is very important, and we are in a new stage, and a lot of the American public doesn't realize this. This is World War II style war now. This is what we call great powers competition, and a lot of the things that we're trying to do now, we haven't done since World War II, because we really haven't. As one general told us this last week, we have been in conflict, but we have not been in war. And now this is a different ball game. So we got a game on. Game is on. So the Pentagon is emphasizing improving its data.
It's not a game.
Yep.
Except it's not a game.
Exactly. It's not. The Pentagon is emphasizing improving its data infrastructure right now. It spends less than 1% of its $825 billion budget on software. And you can see what the spend is. Right now, this is according to The Economist magazine as of June, and I do trust them as a source. So with all of this talk, what are the core AI, the core principles and ethics that the DoD is pushing forward? Well, they're listed here for you. You can see them. So what do these mean? So responsible in the DoD parlance is the exercising of appropriate levels of judgment for the development, deployment, and use of AI capabilities. Again, you see that life cycle. You want to take deliberate steps to minimize unintended bias in AI capabilities. And this is not just racial bias, it's also bias in terms of where you target, for example. You don't want to over target one place. You want to be able to make sure that you've got a good spread, for example. So it's anything that could bias your data or lead you to target something that shouldn't be targeted. That's another big issue. You want to have it be traceable. So you want to develop and deploy AI capabilities so that personnel have an understanding of what's being used. There is a huge push right now within the DoD to get the workforce ready. So Air Force has got they've got digital university where they're trying to push out distance learning on data literacy, proper AI, the responsible AI use. You'll see it. The Army has deals with Udemy where we can access Udemy courses on these topics. There's vendors out there that are within the TradeWinds marketplace that are also putting courses out on proper use of AI and, more importantly, proper use of data, because that's where the punch is in the data. By the way, just to let you know, like my organization right now is doing a full data audit. They're trying to locate everything that is what we would consider a database, and they're defining database very loosely. For anything from an actual SQL database down to share folders where Excel files live, right? So we're doing a full-scale audit on that right now because our organization is trying to build a solid data strategy to get ready for the next level of things that are going to come. And that is happening across the DoD. We want AI capabilities that are reliable, that have well-defined uses. And we want to make sure that they're being used within the boundaries of safety and security. And we want them to be well tested because, again, we're going to share these capabilities with our allies and partners. And we want to make sure that they fulfill their intended functions, but we also want to be able to deactivate them easily if something is going haywire. We want to be able to shut HAL down. We don't want HAL taking over. Right? So that's one of the key ideas of behind the governable. So we're going to come back to these principles. What you will see in here that is missing, it might fall under equitable, but you don't see it written out. And this is taken directly from DoD guidance. You don't see the concept around availability and accessibility addressed. There is a large AI divide between allies and partners. Some have more AI than others. There are language barriers. There are socioeconomic barriers that are there, and we're going to touch on this later. But that is not right now part of the core principles for the DoD at this point. So this is the power triangle here, that data is it. And you'll see that the quality of data takes up the largest portion of this hierarchy of needs. This is all over the CDAO and the DoD now. This is the data hierarchy of needs. And it starts with quality data and making sure that you've got good, clean data. And that's getting harder and harder to find. But the DoD, we have data hiding in so many places that is just unstructured and that hasn't been pulled in. So there's been a lot of discussion about data pools and data lakes and what have you, and data strategy. So we want to improve the foundation of our data management. We want to expand our digital talent, and that is taking place. In fact, I think in the news recently, there's a big push to try and work with OPM across the services to identify better digital talent and try to bring that in. And you see pilot projects all across the DoD now, and some of them are institutionalized as well to try and recruit and train the internal workforce. So there's a lot of conversations going on and a lot of pilot projects taking place right now. It's a rich and exciting time for this. I mean, I've been in the DoD 20 years and I haven't seen such a push on trying to educate the workforce. So we're not going to go through all of this in, whoa, what happened? Oops. I lost my presentation here. Let's see. Yeah, you're all still there. Let's see if I can pull it back up. It's called a computer burp. I can get it. Come
We
on.
give you an A+, Tara, on technology knowledge and manipulation. A+.
I'm among friends. Okay.
That's 37. You were on slide 37.
There we go. Yeah, so you have the pyramid. You can look it up, but I didn't want to, it's sort of there. So one issue that comes up, and this is sort of stepping a little bit outside of the DoD, but it kind of is about aligning with these values. This is a list of countries that have legislation to protect data. The one thing I will tell you, we always think of data and the DoD as like, weapon systems and stuff, but, in Monterey, we have DMDC. They manage they have all of our databases and all of our manpower. And so data privacy about our service members is really important. There's medical privacy. So we have HIPAA laws, we have COBRA laws. We respect all of those laws within the DoD to protect the information about our service members. So, when you have big data breaches like China taking OPM data or what have you, that's a big deal for us, just like it is for everybody else. So you can see here that there's a lot of legislation around the globe. Some of the places where there's legislation surprise me, but the Security is a nice little site if you want to explore. I'd be really interested what the Russian regulation is on data privacy, or the Chinese regulation on data privacy for that matter. But you can kind of see that where things are. Right now, there is no comprehensive federal consumer protection data law. We do have some kind of early stage data protection that we might be able to use as a starting point, but we definitely need to build it out. I'm not going to spend tons of time on this because it's not exactly the point of this presentation, but it's important for you guys, especially if you're working on training, because if you're stationed in the state of California, to some degree you are subject to California rules on these things, even if you are the DoD. So we have privacy acts at the federal level, and basically that people have the right to know that information is being collected, how it's being utilized, and the ability to request corrections. That is part of that Privacy Act. You have state-to-state legislation. So California was early out the gate for obvious reasons. I mean, it is the home of Silicon Valley, and a lot of this has been born there. So in our state constitution, we have a right to privacy. And I say we because I am a California native, and therefore, and I'm a California resident. So even though I'm in Virginia right now, and I'm glad to see that Virginia has a Consumer Data Protection Act as well. And it's modeled on the California Act. And this is why we're getting notifications when there's data breaches. A lot of that is required in these state laws. You can see that Colorado, Utah, there's some movement in Wisconsin and Ohio. So it's becoming a state-to-state sort of movement. Breaking news for you all, just yesterday, there is in California legislature right now, the Safe and Secure Innovation for Frontier Artificial Intelligence Models Act, SB 1047. This will be the very first attempt at regulating AI in the United States, and it has gone through the legislature. It now needs to go through the state assembly for potential budgeting and then signature to the governor. It is supposed to happen tomorrow. If it happens, then it would probably be enacted and signed by the governor by the end of August. And this requires the developers of AI tools to test to make sure that these tools cannot enable. I said WMD. The legislature has a whole long list of things. I just called it, basically, it's like it can't launch nuclear systems and do crazy stuff on its own. So we have to test that and make sure that it can't have any feed into any or create any catastrophic level attacks. So you can find this. The New York Times is reporting on it today, so you can read more about it. They also want to establish what they call a CalCompute. CalCompute is a public cloud that would be a resource for smaller developers to do research in a safe, secure environment for AI deployment. Because part of the problem is all of our AI, for the most part, is being driven by the very large companies, but there's a lot of smaller companies that want to be able to test as well. So they're hoping that they would be able to get some kind of a nice, safe place for those companies to test and deploy AI tools. And then they also have a lot of whistleblower protections for employees at AI companies. And the reason this has been built in is because of what happened at OpenAI, where whistleblowers within that company faced quite a bit of recrimination. So we want to strengthen, or the state wants to strengthen whistleblower protection laws for those inside of companies. So this is kind of a start. We'll see if it gets all the way through the process, but this is something that you can read about in the news today. So there's a lot of challenges, obviously, for regulation. And these challenges are, the DoD faces them as well. You want to enhance, we have existing laws, but we need to enhance them to make sure that we're accounting for these new data protections. AI is a different animal than one we've had before. So that's part of the struggle. And we're not even really sure, some of us aren't really sure what kind of animal it is. We have a good idea, but what are we protecting against? And a lot of this we're not going to know until, unfortunately, the harm has happened. So it would be nice to be proactive, but I'm not sure we're going to be able to stay ahead of it. There is an AI arms race going on, as you all know. So these are the types of areas where the laws will have to be strengthened potentially. Intellectual property, we all know about. Employment and labor, we've seen some start with that when we saw the Hollywood strikes early on, and there's a new round potentially coming because that you have producers, film producers now that weren't covered by the original deal, and they may go on strike because they would like to protect their jobs. So we have to kind of, we're figuring this out as a society as we move forward. So the one thing that we can do, though, is we can choose how we use AI. And I need to point out that AI helps solve a task. It doesn't help solve a problem. People have to solve problems. AIs are just tools to help us and empower us to have decision advantage. And policy doesn't change culture, but people do. So we have to build a culture that integrates safe AI use from the get-go. And we start that by doing a much better job than we did with social media. We've already learned some lessons from that. And that's what we need to be able to apply those lessons to this new tool. So AI, any technology, any advancement raises ethical questions. And this is a list of just a few off the top of my head where we've had a lot of ethical questions and we're still struggling with some of them. Genetic engineering, reproductive technologies, autonomous vehicles have raised a lot of questions. And in many ways, that's where most people think when they think AI, they think of autonomous vehicles. Climate change. There's a lot of promise with technology on climate change, but we also have to make sure that our tools are sustainable. And then we talk about property ownership and rights. So this is going back to my theme of we've been here before, folks. We know how to do this. We have frameworks.
Tara, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
can I jump in? This question is I think is really relevant, and I can answer, but I want you to do it. Will DoD deploy AI tools for general use like any other software?
I do not perceive so, no. But
Okay.
it's early days. It's early days, and it will depend on in what domain. What kind of AI software do you want deployed for general use?
Right. Because I know we do have some tech tools that we develop that are in the public domain, but they're technology tools. They do not, there's nothing AI in them.
No.
These were developed years ago. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I think what the questioner is talking about though is, and this is true. Something that is oftentimes developed for a DoD setting will eventually be released on the consumer market.
Right.
And yeah, will the DoD do it? I don't know. Will it happen? Perhaps, probably, most likely.
Well,
I think I don't. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, go ahead. As long as, we deal all the time with safety and security and certain programs that are, we can't release just because, they may compromise, security, either for military personnel or developers, or just the information that, we just can't let it out there because of,
Well,
obviously
the
our
other part
defense.
is for researchers, because we do have, DoD partners with academia a lot of times. And so, for example, if somebody in academia wants to access data or tools for research purposes, there are internal review boards and procedures for accessing that kind of thing throughout the DoD. But in terms of just the DoD saying, hey, people have this, I'm not sure. It will depend. I mean, maybe if it's like things for like disaster relief, for example, it may very well happen. It
Sure.
makes sense.
Sure. Thank you.
Okay, I was going to play this video, but my video is not working, so unfortunately, we're not going to be able to play it. But I will talk you through it. This is a clip where Captain of the Starship Enterprise is defending an AI-powered. For those of you who are Trekkies, Data is the name, and he's a humanoid computer, basically. And there's an engineer that arrives that wants to take data apart, and reverse engineer him so he can make more. And this is sort of a discussion of when does something become sentient? At what point does our technology become so much independent that it actually has rights? And we're asking this question around the abortion question right now. At what point does something have rights? And I know it seems really far out there, very sci-fi. This idea of what is it to be human and what is it to be sentient. And of course, there's a lot of great discussion in the video about that. It's not that far out though, folks, because right here is a product called Nomi AI. Maybe some of you have used it. It allows people to have AI friends. And you can see here, the images are generated by AI. And you can see some of the comments apparently that are notably from users. And in our world, because we teach foreign language, there's been a lot of discussion about AI tutors and AI language partners. And I wanted to throw this up as just sort of, hello, your kids are already doing this. And this particular tool will actually, throughout the day, send you text messages as if your friend is actually texting you throughout the day. And you can imagine that if you're training soldiers, and at DLI, we get a lot of young soldiers, they're 18, 19 years old. We get a lot of gamers, obviously, and a lot of guys and gals who love technology, and they've used it. They're digital natives, and they're not thinking necessarily, they don't have the structure yet to be concerned about these kinds of tools. I think they have a great promise, but they also hold obviously great risk. So you can kind of see what some of these comments are. The tool will send you selfies throughout the day. You can see the images are fairly realistic. We all are familiar with deep fakes. If we have Replica, this is another one. Same idea, the AI companion who cares, is always on your side. I don't know if that's always a good thing to have somebody always on your side. I think sometimes having somebody who challenges you is probably not a bad idea. So what we have to worry about with our young soldiers and airmen and sailors is that they're not putting personally identifiable information, or they're not using these tools as a way to leak data, potential data, into these AI models. So if you're looking at adopting a tool like this, based on this presentation, you should already know what your first step is, and that is conduct your risk assessment and figure out what the potential pitfalls could be before you go into it's very exciting when you get a new tool. I am like a kid in a candy store when I get a new tool, and I get really excited. But you have to slow down and say, wait, let's go through that risk assessment, because Tara just taught us what a Stopes assessment is, and we can do that. And then we want to throw that up against our guiding principles and make sure that when we look at what our risk assessment is, where do we fall in terms of responsible, equitable, traceable, reliable, and governable? And is that something that's in compliance and in alignment with these principles? I went through just some of the privacy policies for you to offer you some fun with that. And you can kind of get a sense here. I looked at Replica, Nomi AI, and just for fun, I looked at OpenAI. I obviously didn't look at everything like Gemini and all of them, but I did glance at a few, and they all are very similar. So basically, whenever you're using an AI tool, it wants to personalize that for you. So it's data, and it's also to give data out to third parties, just like you do on social media now, just like with all of the apps that we use. So you want to be careful when you're giving it facts of your life, when you're putting information in just to check information. I caught myself the other day because I was prompting an AI engine about something, and I said, well, as an employee of the DoD, and I stopped for a minute because I was like, okay, wait a minute. Is there another way? It doesn't matter that I'm an employee with the DoD, there's a lot of us, but it just gave me a moment to say, is that something that I should reveal to an AI search that I'm doing? Is there another way I can prompt it and get what I want without doing that? So you want to learn, because as we learn in the military, data protection starts with us. It really starts with us. Our leaders and our agencies can put all these big policies out, but if we aren't carrying them out and we are not paying attention, then it's all for naught. So today I asked Gemini about storage. Just did this morning because I was curious about how data is stored and where it's stored. And that's a really big deal. We want data to be stored on our own, our servers here in the United States, or with a few permissible allies. One of my vendors recently came to me. They want to use an AI tutor, not one as intense as the ones I showed you. And one of the first things we went through is, where's the data being held? How long is it being held? What are the retention policies? So you want to really look at that. So I asked Gemini, where do you store my data? And for those of you who don't know, Gemini is the Google AI. Where do you store my data? And Gemini responded that it doesn't store your personal data in the same way of a traditional computer. As an AI language model, I process information in a fundamentally different manner. And it goes on to explain quite interestingly and quite correctly that there is a form of temp storage until a response is generated. And then once that response is generated, the data is discarded. And the system doesn't hold on to that. It will hang on to general patterns of interactions, and that may be used to improve the model. So I probed it some more because I was very, very curious to find out what else I could learn about this. And it told me that I asked it, are other companies doing this? Do they do it the same way that Gemini does it? And it said, in general, yes. However, there are some variations. So some products may store data for specific purposes, like for your personalized experiences. There will be data sharing with third parties, so you need to read your privacy agreements. And the data retention policies will vary by company. So how long do they carry it? And yes, they do use it for training sometimes. That's just, if you want the tool to work to personalize for you, it's going to have to use your data. So I asked, can I trust an AI tool's data location claim? Because in research, what I'm finding is there's no right to be forgotten in the United States. There is in Europe, but you can't just be forgotten from an AI training set, because it's so convoluted and so complex that they can't just pull your data away. At some point, they can't even trace it back to you. So AI explained to me that, you might have data processed in one place and stored in a different place. So it varies. Data sharing may be shared with affiliates that are located outside of the United States. And legal jurisdiction will shift. And all of this makes perfectly good sense to me. I hope it makes sense to you, because, you want to see, going to the previous question I had about closed systems, where you're putting your data. So this was just my conversation this morning with Gemini.
Did you actually get an answer as to what it does with your data? If it dumps it, it must dump it someplace. So
it basically removes it, it said. But in terms of, can I verify how it removes it? Let me go back to that. I can't. I don't have any visibility. I have to trust what it says, right? Just like I have to trust what the expert tells me when I ask the expert about that.
Yeah.
Or I have to probe it further and see if it will deliver an answer. But this is one of the problems with the large AI firms right now, is they're not being as transparent as they used to be. They used to be much more transparent and allowing people to examine the data sets, and they're not doing that anymore. Because, of course, we're now in a very competitive commercial market, and they want to make money.
Yeah. Sandy, you want to ask the question that's in the chat?
Oh, you can. Well, I kind of answered the last part because it's, something it's related to the prompt engineering, but Tara, you may want to piggyback too. But so Stephen again wanted to know, so if I put information in, it will not be used by others, followed by, to get better answers from Gemini, you provide more data information, but it may learn from your data. So I just kind of addressed, yes, you can put in, that's what we call a prompt engineering process. And yeah, you just refine your prompt, and then you can keep asking until you get what you want. But I think the question goes into a deeper level of, putting in information. Will it be used by others? And it may learn from your data that you put in.
Yeah. So again, information comes in many different shapes and sizes. So learning, metadata is data, is information. So metadata, for instance, on where you're located, what type of operating system you're using, what date you're accessing, that is information. Will that go into a training set? It depends. It depends on what the AI tool is trying to accomplish. What do if you're not, again, that it really just depends, right? Yeah, you're talking about your personal information. So if my name is Tara and I say my name is Tara, and I'm just like in Gemini, Gemini is not going to care that my name is Tara. But if I'm trying to use one of these tools that's personalizing my interaction, like one of these fake friends, well, then it may hang on to that. Now, the question is, if I decide to quit using this tool, I don't want to use it. I've put all this information in, and I'm tired of this fake friend, or this fake friend offends me and I want to cancel it. Now, what happens to all of that data? You have to look at the privacy agreement with the company and find out, that gets into that question of how long do they hold it? Do they hold it as long as you are using the tool, or in the case of maybe Gemini, as long as I'm logged in, and then once I log out, it dumps it all? That's what you have to find out. It's clear. I don't know. I hope that kind of addresses it.
Yeah, I think the idea is that when you follow up, you put in initial information, and then if you don't get what you want, you refine it, you follow up. But is it training the model to answer a similar question? So, I think the point is that by doing that more, is it going to make it easier to query and get your desired results, which is how we were actually the search engines, when it got better the more people use Google Translate. But I don't know that I would definitely say yes, but
well, they do have a method. There is a method. In fact, if you use Gemini, you will see it. In fact, I saw it today. The prompt that I put in, prompt optimization is one of the things that these engines will do. So they'll read what you wrote, and they will then rephrase it. And in my case, they made it a lot shorter, but it was actually a good way to ask the same question. And then it produced that information. And the nice part was that Gemini actually showed me how it rephrased my initial prompt. So there is a form of prompt optimization that is out there that is currently, all of them are using it. Will it get better? Yeah, it very well could be. Like, Google Translate, yes, did get better over time as more people used Google Translate. But I don't know, because I don't work at Google, so I don't have the insight into how they're actually doing that. So getting back to the point that AI is everybody's job, and so just some general rules, and this is something that my organization has provided guidance on, and I offer it to you in case one of your organizations wants to do this. You want to avoid using free tools if you can. I mean, granted, we do, it's harder to avoid it now because the AI is built into the search engines. I mean, all you do is hit Google and you've got a search engine answering you now. And by the way, there's discussion about how that could actually change greatly the internet, because a lot of Google's model is being paid for by advertising dollars. And if it starts summarizing information through AI, then where is the advertising dollars going to come from? So wait and see. Hang on with both your hands and see how this is going to work. But you do want to read your user and privacy policies for these tools and applications. A lot of us in the education and distance learning profession have been using things like Quizlet, Kahoot, Padlet for many, many years. And those tools are beginning to integrate AI features. And so you're going to want to see those new privacy statements that as a result of those changes. So I do encourage you, if you've been using those kinds of tools, to revisit those privacy policies. Our organization says, please, avoid using free tools. If you do try a free tool and you like it, we have a specific process in our organization. if we want to purchase or license that, there is a process by which we can do that. Be careful of the type of PII you're putting into AI tools. And I want to kind of caveat this. There's a lot of AI tools that are there for a very specific purpose. So for example, medical data. If I'm working with, say, an AI tool that is developed by my doctor's office, and this gets to the point about a closed system, and it's only for use within my medical community or with my insurance provider, that may not be as harmful as if I'm just putting it into a big general AI engine like Gemini or Copilot or any of these others. So you want to kind of be savvy about what you're putting in. I would never, in any AI tool, put my social security number in. So this gets back to my point. The rules we've learned about personally identifiable information still apply with AI. That does not change. Okay. Also, you want to be accountable for what AI produces. Now, this is a lot of fun because I have watched people say, for instance, use AI to write something, and then when I start to ask them questions about it, they can't answer the questions. So you have to still know your content. I could not have done this presentation without a lot of research. Okay. So I'm still accountable. Just because AI put something in my hands, like those slides I showed you, I let you know that I pulled that from Gemini. And if it's wrong, that falls on me too, because I'm the one who provided that information to you. So we're still accountable for what happens here. And by the way, if the military uses an AI tool to help with targeting, it's still the human being who's dealing with that target. It's not the AI tool. I'm still responsible for the outcome. And please don't ask the AI tool to teach you how to build something nasty and illegal. A lot of these tools have been tuned, as we say, to kind of stop that. Initially, when they were coming out, we heard all these really funny stories about things that people were getting the models to do. They were breaking the models. That's harder to do now because the companies have gotten more savvy about that. So, if you want to read some fun things, you can read about what various these tools have done. So now that I've exhausted you all, let's go and take these big DoD principles of responsible, governable, traceable, reliable. How do those filter down to our level as trainers and educators? Well, if you're the faculty member, I would say choose your tools, the AI tools you're going to use, whether you're in training or whether you're whatever environment you're in, for a clear educational purpose. So when my vendor comes to me and says, I'd like to use this tool, let me show you the tool, let me tell you what my thinking is, they've got a clear purpose that they're trying to use. And I'm good with that. Seek AI literacy. Be smart consumers. There is so much information out there for you now. There is no excuse for you not to know. I am 52 years old and I was able to learn all of this. So I don't want to hear somebody tell me, oh, I don't know how to do it. We can all learn. It's all there for you to learn it. And it's fascinating and it's energizing and it's relevant. Model responsible AI use. So if you're the faculty member, don't use Gemini or Copilot to develop your lesson material and then withhold that from your student. I would be honest with my student that I use those tools to help me, because it may help the student learn how to use those tools more responsibly as well. Be transparent about it. Let your students know, let your supervisors know. I used AI on my performance appraisal this year. And the reason I did that is that we have a system that only allows us to put 2,000 characters into a box. And when I write out all of my information, it obviously exceeds 2,000 characters. And the system I have is that I give my long version to my supervisor, and so that she can also vet that for her write-up that she has to do. But in order to fit it into the 2,000 character box, I asked AI, take this chunk and put it into 2,000 characters. And I told my supervisor I was doing it. And I even put in the box of my own performance appraisal that I used AI to help with that. I'm being very transparent. I'm not lying. Okay. And there was a backup. So there was the Terra produced version and then sort of the functional version for the online form as well. So we had 2 versions, but they both fundamentally said the same thing. So that's another thing, is if you're going to use it, if you're going to, use AI to help you write an abstract, if you're whatever, just be honest that you've done it. There's nothing wrong with it. Monitor student use of AI tools and ensure responsible integration into coursework. You can build these tools into the training that you're doing, but you want them to serve the educational purpose. And then for students, follow the academic integrity codes. Don't just grab stuff out of AI, paste it, and put your paper in. Be smart. The students are so bright these days on how to use these tools because they're digital natives. And so now they need to be smart as well and responsible. And they also need to seek AI literacy. What I found is that a lot of students consume technology, but don't really understand it and how it's working. So we want to make sure that we have some sense of how it's working. You don't have to be an expert, but you do have to have, some idea of how these things function. Declare your sources, just like you would normally. Follow your teacher's guidance. There's going to be times when teachers are going to say, I don't want you using AI for this. Respect that. And remain responsible for the information that's produced. Don't try to say my dog did my homework and therefore I'm not responsible, because you are.
Tara, can I just,
yeah.
I'm sorry. Do you want to finish that thought?
Yeah. I was also, actually, I lost the thought. So go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I don't want you to lose it.
It's okay. No,
Well, and actually I had a question for you. So 2 things. What we're telling our instructors for our intermediate and advanced courses regarding AI is to exactly what Tara was saying about homework. And at first they were saying you may not use AI for homework. And then you realize that, well, if the instructors are using it to develop activities and things that are responsible use, you can't really tell the students. And so we deferred to your teacher will guide you as to responsible use and also productive use, because there's many things AI does that promote for us our language acquisition. And there are many things that they may do innocently, such as checking a translation, where we don't want them to do that in AI, because then we can't notice the mistakes and do the formative assessment that's also really important in moving forward. So I just wanted to highlight that. And I was wondering if you have come up with a formula for citing when you've actually gotten information from AI. And because I don't know that we're there yet, but as long as people know that it came from a chatbot, we're okay.
I have not. What I generally do is I just put a declaration statement that this was done with the assistance of, and then I cite specifically which AI it is. So this was done with the assistance of Copilot, or this was done with the assistance of Google's Gemini. I don't put a hyperlink or anything to it, but I do cite it. But I have not, let's be honest, I have not used AI for anything more than just occasional, information. I haven't used it to write anything where I've needed to do a formal citation.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So responsible, again, I think this is just redundant. I don't need to keep going over it. One other thing would be is as educators, if you're going to use AI tools with students, you might want to consider, like we always do, using aliases. That's one way of getting around worrying about identity. For instance, with my vendor wanting to use a tool, we would need to set up accounts for the students, and we were trying to figure out how we could do that with an alias instead of who they actually are. And again, I'm all for AI assisted projects, and we're having some conversations about that, about how we can, there are portions in the course where maybe I want a student to use an AI engine to transcribe something because I want them to then quality control it and check it. So just like, with calculators back in the days of math class, we want them to use these tools. We want them to see what the dangers are. One of the tricks I used to do with students when they wanted to use Google Translate is I would give them, in the target language they were studying, I would give them an idiomatic expression. And I would say, now put that into Google Translate and tell me what it gives you. And it would usually give them something that kind of sounded weird. And then I would say, now take that English version that it produced, plop it back into the target and see what it produces back in the target language. So I would do like this little telephone game with the idiot, and you would see that after 1 or 2 turns, it was nonsensical. And I wanted them to see that, because I wanted them to understand that you can only trust this so far, and then it breaks down. So you still are responsible for doing this correctly and knowing how, when it's going wrong, that you have to have enough knowledge to know when it's going wrong. And then also show students how AI can be used to provide additional practice, but maintain the focus on the human in the loop. And you know what? Most of our students still want that human collaboration. They do spend a lot of time on the internet as it is, and they really do appreciate the role of a teacher and other classmates. And I have students all the time that talk about how they, a lot of our students are one-on-one, and it's pretty intense, and they really sometimes miss having another classmate available to work with. So they still want that human touch. One thing when we talk about equitable, and this might be of interest to you all, 80% of the training data is in English. So while AI can perform fairly well in a lot of foreign languages, there's many that it can't perform well on at all. And one of them that has been called out that it's particularly bad is Vietnamese. It doesn't do well at all because of the nature of that language. It's highly tonal. So, how well can AI do? And remember, we think of AI as words, but I'm also thinking of it in terms of AI can produce audio, it can produce video, and it can produce images. So, there are cultural biases built into the data set just by the fact that 80% of it is in English. And the things that we write and we look at as English speakers are very different from the things that people overseas, look at and find attractive and what have you. Right to left languages will have a lot of issues. Good luck trying to do this if you are dealing with Arabic to a degree. I've got mixed reviews from Arabic speakers on how well AI produces that. Indigenous languages are not at all represented usually in these AI systems because they're not in the training data. They're not on the internet. So you can see some graphics here again, Economist Magazine, just kind of taking a look as of May 2023, what the languages were that were represented. And then we know that the LLMs in terms of topics are most aligned with American values. This is like the same movie that I saw play when the internet was really coming up in the 90s. And this was exactly the same thing that happened, where all of the information was pretty much American, and then others caught on over time. So the other thing is, there's a lot of these systems, if you're in a country that wants to block you, you're not ever going to get to the system. Some of these require US phone numbers and US payment plans in order to access the AI. And if you're in a place where you can't do that, then you're locked out of access. And so we have issues around, equitable sharing of these kinds of tools. We have a huge advantage right now, but it's pretty one-sided at this point. So there is a digital divide. You have to be literate. I mean, how do you type a prompt if you don't know how to type? You might be able to speak into, now you can do voiced prompting as well, but you have to still understand what's coming out the other end. Some languages and scripts require a lot of tokens. So the way AI tends to work is each time you hit it, you get a token, and then for each prompt, you get a token. And if you use up your tokens, what have you, then you're out of luck. This used to be how text messages were, like, you'd have to pay per text message kind of thing. But these tokenizers are a way of managing traffic. And so some languages require a lot more tokens to process than others. And so what are we going to do about that? So you have to optimize each of the languages that you're working with. And you have a lot of countries where we don't have things in digital format. India is a nation that has done huge progress on digitizing things that were basically paper-based. And if you can imagine the size of the bureaucracy in India when you have over 1 billion people, there's some countries haven't gotten through that loop yet. So all of this requires adjustment. Then you get to the traceable value. So you want to know, as we've already said, the policy plans, understand the basics, RACI guidelines. So that's who's responsible. So you can have a little chart, you've all seen the RACI charts, who's responsible, who's accountable, who's supporting, who's consulted and informed. It's a way of tracking to make sure that you're getting all of that community support and that we know who's accountable at the end of it. And then the big thing is, don't keep data that you don't need. And we just had this conversation in our office because we have some pieces of data that once a student is gone from us, they're no longer valid for us to hang on to, and we don't have a plan for removing that. So we have to work on that. And that gets back to that data management piece, because data that is loose out there, it's quite possible it'll leak. So you don't want that to happen. So we want it to be reliable. Okay, so this was another video clip, and what it is they have developed a tool where if you scan a hot dog, it'll say it's a hot dog, and everybody gets really excited because it's working. And then they say try pizza, and then he scans pizza and it says not hot dog, and then they get really angry. And they're like, you mean it only recognizes hot dogs? And he says it recognizes not hot dog too. So systems have their limitations. So you want to be clear about which AIs to use. We've had that conversation at our organization. You know, are we gonna allow ChatGPT? Are we gonna allow Gemini? Are we gonna try to limit everybody to Copilot? I don't really know how you can block people off of those platforms. And what I have told, I have advised my local leadership that banning is not the answer. The White House executive order says that as well, that it's much better to maybe create incentives to use certain things, certain packages over other things, but we don't want to overdo it. You want specific tools for specific tasks. So, you know, in some cases, Gemini might be better than Copilot. Copilot might be better than, you know, OpenAI, what have you. So you want to kind of get acquainted and try different things so that you know what the limitations of them are, and you want to set expectations accordingly. So in making responsible choices, you want to know what value the AI is going to bring to your organization and how easy it is to course correct if the tool goes wrong. And just there's this wonderful little saying I learned: simplicity scales and complexity fails. So the simpler you make it, the easier it is to scale. And so stick with tools that are simple at the beginning until the workforce can catch up. You don't want to go releasing really critical systems, what have you, if you don't have the workforce trained for it. Always remember that it's a robot. It's not a person, and we talk about it like it's a person, and it's not. So we've got to always keep that in the back of our mind. And the most successful tools, whether they're AI, whether they're technology, they work in the background and people don't notice them. That means that, you know, that usually they're bringing some kind of value. You're aware they're there, but they're not getting in your way. And that's a good choice. Okay, we're at the end, and you guys have stuck with me. I'm not sure how many of you are left. I hope I didn't bore you. You are free to take this post test if I can get, let me get it started. And it's a very simple question.
Still over 30 people.
Oh, wow. I did good. Okay.
Yeah. If anybody didn't see it too, Carla posted the APA style. That always APA jumps right on the bandwagon. We've been kind of floundering, but and then Husni Ibrahim posted something he found on more government. I have to go back up in the chat, but take a look, because those are really important bits of information. What the anticipated U.S. Congress regulations would look like. He got it from ChatGPT. So I guess the moral of the story here is that now, even with this presentation, everybody's going to the chatbots to get more information to enhance your presentation. So
awesome.
Thank you.
Awesome. Awesome.
It's pretty.
So you can participate in the Slido if you want to,
Yeah.
if you're still there. So I'll leave it up so people can scan it. And I'll be interested to see how many of you guys feel, I guess what I'm looking for is, you know, do you feel like you learned something? This wasn't a wasted 2 hours. That's what I want to hear. I want to hear you come out feeling better.
No.
Okay. Oh, okay. That was the old one. Let's go to this one. Thank you. You guys are awesome. I like to see that you guys feel more confident. That's excellent.
I'm typing.
Tara, did we lose Tara?
Yeah, we did.
She just deselected her camera.
Tara, can you hear us? Wait, I can text her.
I just did the.
Did you text?
I just sent a fantastic presentation. Thank you.
Okay, let me see where she's at.
and I sent her my rating.
A lot of thank yous coming in, Carla and Sandy. A lot of thank yous and a lot of information saying how helpful this presentation was.
It's an outstanding presentation. Tara, you were just such a gift to us. Thank you so
Yes,
much.
Tara. We see your reaction.
Oh, yay. I don't know what happened. I just texted her. Yes, this is, well, and you know, a lot of, I can tell you, you know, being with, you know, DoD and at DLI, uh, this policy has been taken very seriously. And what we're doing now, it's evolved even from the beginning, starting with new students coming in, and we give them an initial orientation on effective use of AI. We're working on a playbook also. These are ways that you can use it. And a lot of it you have fun with, and it promotes language learning. It gets engaging, and I'm sure for other areas you can adapt that too. So you're kind of coming from a place of, you know, avoid the negativity. Not, I mean, and we need to know what we should and shouldn't do, but focusing on this is how it will best benefit you. And please be aware of the plagiarism issue, copyright issue. This is how you address it. But now let's move to, if you want to use it, one example of an activity, one student has an image, and I have so much fun with this because Dolly is now integrated into Copilot. And one student describes the picture to another student who is actually writing the prompt, and they get a result generated instantly. And the student with the image looks at it and you know, and they start he laughs because he realizes maybe the information was wrong, the prompt maybe wasn't as explicit, so he needs to fine tune it. The other person keeps prompting until they get something reasonable facsimile, and you hear so much language engagement. So those are the kinds of things you want to really promote, and you know, and then you stay within that policy. So yes, it was good.
Tara, I don't know if you heard us all exclaiming about how wonderful you were and what an outstanding webinar it was. And I said you are a gift to us. We appreciate it so much. It was
Thank
really
you.
wonderful.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank
Yes,
you.
we do. Thank
We
you.
do.
And thank you from Kelly and from Scott and from Maria and many, many, many others.
Yeah, it was great to see my colleagues. That Kelly and Scott are my colleagues. So as a Sandy, so I appreciate it. So I'll stay on until folks kind of log off in case there's any additional questions or what have you.
Well,
And
I do,
yeah.
Tara. If you know, you were talking about the free tools, and you know, traditionally when we've been looking at tools, because we have to go through a process, as Tara said, to get the licenses, to get, you know, to get it paid for. So what are we supposed to do then? Because I know, and you know, we're all, like, I know for me, there are a lot of other chatbots, and some of them have a different personalities, different, and I have some favorites, and they are free tools. So, you know, again, you follow responsible use policies, but does that mean now that we just shouldn't use them at all? I wonder, can you?
I wouldn't say that. I think the don't use free tools is really more for like, don't use, if you, there are benefits to using paid licensed tools.
Yes.
You have additional protections and what have you. I think where the don't use free tools came from is at DLI, for example, a lot of teachers were finding learning applications and they were only using the free versions. And we didn't want them doing that because if they're licensed, then we capture the data, we have access to it, and
Right.
just like with Padlet. So I
Right.
think you have to discern, granted, you know, Gemini is free, ChatGPT is free. However, the paid versions of ChatGPT are much more powerful and have better security. So again, it depends on your organization's, you know, priorities. And but that's the guidance from our organization, is to please limit the use of free tools and, you know, use them to try. But if you really want to, then, you know, you can pay for them. And Erica, I saw, what is your process of approving the use of free tools? So Erica, what happens at DLI is, if a teacher, there's a form.
There's an SOP, yeah, yes.
There's an SOP and there's a form for if you find a tool that you want, you have to apply, you fill out the form. It has to go through a committee inside of the schoolhouse so that other people in the schoolhouse can also vet it and decide if it's worthy of use. And then if that's approved, it gets signed off by our schoolhouse dean, and then it goes up to our deputy chief of staff for information technology. And there they also vet it for cybersecurity and what have you for their criteria. And also then we look at budgeting, and they also look to see if we have another tool already licensed that would be adequate to serving the process. And we created criteria and what have you. And then periodically DLI will look at all of its licenses. And we just went through this exercise about a year ago and decide which tools are being used and which ones we need to shed, because lots of times we buy way more licenses than we need. Example, ThinkLink was something that was really cool and a lot of people liked it.
She's
And
frozen.
so
Oh,
it was
there
a question of, yeah. So the usage was down. And so we had to decide to let go of some of those licenses. So that's our process essentially.
Yeah, and we did the same too. We had Linoit and Padlet, and we realized Padlet really had was more functional. Plus, Padlet, you can give somebody the link and they don't necessarily have to log in. Linoit, you need to create classrooms. So, you know, and I was part of that eTools task force. Tara was on it too. And, you know, and it's an iterative process. So we're constantly looking at the return on investment, usage. There are some programs unique to specific languages. And if the usage is way up, even though it's not used institute-wide, it's a good return on investment and very beneficial. I think one is for a Japanese-Chinese program. So,
yeah.
Okay, well, I think we're just about at the end. Thank you again, Tara. Thank you so very much.
You're welcome.
Sandy, we were so glad you joined us. It was great.
course.
Russ, thanks for everything that you do for us, and to all of you for joining us today. Just a quick reminder that on September 19th at 2 p.m. Eastern, we'll have Ellen Finkelstein walking us through using Copilot with PowerPoint. And we again want to thank our fabulous sponsors, COSO Cloud, Zoom, and Moodle, for working with us in so many ways. That concludes the webinar. Good afternoon.